announcement will be made at the end of this video, so please stay tuned for that. Tis the season for a new year, so we're doing this again for the 16th time. So, we're officially in the new year, and we're starting this year off with another episode of this Airlow Rambling series that is nearly 3 years old as of the making of this video.
Oh, I haven't said that in a while.
So anyways, yes, this is the 16th entry to my series that I've been doing, as I mentioned earlier. I don't know why, but I have a strange feeling that whenever I pump out a video like this, it would always get released like a month late, which is essentially a late video that was supposed to be posted around a month ago. And with school essentially taking away my time from making these, yeah, I can kind of see why I would usually just post these types of videos like a month late or something. I'll try to make up for you guys by releasing this video on time. And yeah, that's basically it for what I wanted to talk about in this section. Let's just get into the video, shall we? Number 1. Between the mid to late 1910s, all the way up towards 1967, the Little Western branch line was a dual-gauged alignment, with the broad gauge and standard gauge trains sharing the line from Teignmouth bound for Hardwick. The implementation of the dual gauge system was done by the government as a strategic military movement from a looming threat across the Irish Sea. But by the time that looming threat had already passed, the dual gauge system was then used for civilian and military use until the war was over. During its heyday, the Little Western was considered a novelty, as the lines run through the seaside of the west coast of the island, with broad and standard gauge trains operating along this part of the route, with even the branch line getting its own dedicated passenger service known as the Little Western Limited, which would run from Teignmouth to Hardwick, taking advantage of the sightseeing of the west coast of the island that the railway had been built since the 1860s, and would make a few stops along the Little Western, like Allsborough and Callan, before later arriving at Hardwick using the fleet of the Great Western's 460 steam locomotives for the job, with even the broad gauge sections of the line even receiving its very own express service via using a fleet of locomotives that were sourced from kits of that of the Southeastern and Chatham Railways' N-Class, and were used on the express train from Teignmouth to Hardwick on a non-stop journey, until the service was unfortunately discontinued in the late 1940s. Unfortunately, beginning in the late 1940s, the broad gauge sections began to be reduced, and in 1967, the entirety of the broad gauge section of the Little Western branch line was removed, leaving only the standard gauge trains to ever run along this part of the line, with the Little Western Limited officially being discontinued just a year later in 1968. As of today, the Little Western branch line is primarily a standard gauge line, as the broad gauge sections have now been moved to an isolated part of the island which also connects to the Little Western, but the legacy of the dual gauge system persists even as of now. Number 2. There was once a branch line that operated around the northernmost parts of the island, and starts at Callan and would terminate at Ostead. And this was known as the Blacklock and Ostead branch line, which runs along the mountainous terrains of the northern parts of the island, as it would connect both passengers and goods from 2 different destinations that the branch line serves, such as a flour mill and a former mine that was also served by the Mid-Sodor Railway. This line was a part of the Teignmouth and Hardwick Railway as the only standard gauge line that they ever operated, as they would use some locomotives that were built from specific manufacturers to operate along this line, including some from that of the Midland and Great Northern rolling stock that were also used on this line as well, even after the formation of the North Western Railway. The line would continue to operate with the North Western Railway and even under the British Railways ownership, but by the late 1950s, a decline in traffic had caused the line to dwindle But the line persisted on, even with the dwindling traffic, but it couldn't escape for long, as in 1965, the line would have to be shut down by British Railways, with the last passenger train leaving from Olstead bound for Callan, and the line was eventually ripped up in the late 1960s. As of today, the only remnants of the old line is the station of Callan and its rail yards surrounding it, as both parts are now operational with us to this day. Number 3. The station of Moorooka-upon-Thames was once owned by the North Sudrian Railway Company, as the station itself had served a branch line that leads into the north of Hardwick via the North Hardwick line, and another line that leaves from Moorooka bound for a small town known as Croydon, which is known as the Croydon Line, and was also served by a miniature gauge railway known as the Croydon and Vickerstown Railway, in which it would serve Croydon's Churchwood Street as it would travel along the line before later arriving at its terminus at Vickerstown via the Vickerstown-Allendale Street station. The railway also runs the Gorsethland Line as far as Peel Godred as its southern terminus. The Gorsethland Line was one of the first railway lines to be built by the North Sudrian Railway, as it was completed sometime during the late 1860s to early 1870s, as it would travel through the rugged and mountainous terrains of the Gorsethland Pass to the industry town of Peel Godred, in which would be later be connected via Kildane by the Peel Godred branch line, thus connecting the isolated Gorsethland Line to the rest of the network. The second railway line to be completed under the North Sudrian Railway was the North Hardwick Line, which was completed in 1876 and would be used as the main seaside holiday line for passengers traveling from Moorooka bound for Hardwick, as the North Sudrian Railway would profit off of this line, as it was deemed to be suitable for the summer traffic that they had bound for the northernmost point of Hardwick. Even without the summer traffic, the line is still profitable in its own way. As for the Croydon Line, it was one of the last ever lines to be built by the North Sudrian Railway, having been completed in 1882, as it would serve the same purpose as that of the Gorsethland Line, but more rather it would be less quiet and would run on the flat terrains just like the North Hardwick Line, leading to an advantage of passenger trains going up to speed, in which it led to these services traveling at around 50 to 60 miles per hour on a regularly scheduled service. All of the 3 railway lines that were built by the North Sudrian Railway are still in use to this day, now under the ownership of the North Western Railway after a merger with the company in 1923 and later privatization in 1997. As the Gorsethland Line had been electrified in the 1970s and is now used as an extension of the Peel Godred branch line bound for Moorooka as well as other industries that would also serve the line. As the North Hardwick and the Croydon lines are now in use by the North Western Railway as the most northernmost point of the railway scene, as it would connect passengers from Moorooka bound for Hardwick and Croydon, as it would continue to keep the legacy of that of the North Sudrian Railway ever since. Number 4. The station of Kirkronan, opened in 1865, is located at the Kirkronan branch line, and as the name suggests itself, it is used as the main terminus of the Kirkronan branch line. The branch line had been ran by a fleet of engines that are well known as Percy's friends, known as Ginty and Pug, which are 2 locomotives that had visited the island of Sodor before, and later became residents of the island after their escape from scrap. Other engines would also operate along the Kirkronan branch line. For example, Ginty's main duty is pulling passenger trains from the branch line bound for Vickerstown, while Pug's main duty is to pull small goods bound for Kelstoke Road and the occasional shunting. Other engines that operated along the branch line include a LMS Stanier Class 2 044T, which pulls stopping passenger trains from Kirkronan and heads up the Kirkronan branch line bound for Kelstoke Road, for later returning to the station, a LMS Fowler 2P440 for utility duties like pulling passenger trains out of Kirkronan or goods trains out of the harbor, a BR Standard Class 4260 for the occasional utility duties alongside the 2P, a BR Standard Class 5460 that is used on the express passenger and goods runs, as well as the BR Standard Class 07 Britannia classes, which are used on the express trains out of Kirkronan bound for Timoth and Bickersound. And for shunting around the yards, an LMS Fowler dock tank was used to shunt around the yards at Kirkronan, including the harbor, as the locomotive was initially saved by the Northwestern on its final days of operation to shunt around the yards at Kirkronan as well as the harbor. As of now, the Kirkronan branch line is still with us to this day, as the line received many improvements, including a proposed electrification of the line for the extension of the wires of the Peel Godric branch line, with that set to open later this year. Number 5. Stafford, in my headcanon, is based on a British Railways Class 74, a fleet of electro-diesel locomotives that were rebuilt from the British Railways Class 71s from Crew Works and were used on the southern region until their inevitable withdrawals sometime during the late 1970s, in which all of them have been caught up by 1981. British Railways Class 74 number E5024 was the last Class 71 to be built by British Railways in 1960, as it was used on the southern region on the recently electrified Southeastern Main Line, pulling passengers and goods trains along that line until being rebuilt into a British Railways Class 74 later on in its life. Now being renumbered into Class 74 number 74010, it was used along the southern region until being withdrawn sometime during the late 1970s, where the locomotive was sent to Derby for potential use as a departmental unit, but was sent to Doncaster to await the cutter's torch. While the Class 71 had its own surviving member, that being E5001, which is currently owned by the National Railway Museum of York, and is currently on display at Shildon after operating road tours across Great Britain, the Class 74 was represented by Stafford, as he was bought up by the Northwestern Railway as a potential mixed traffic unit for pulling passengers and freight trains across the main line and potential use across the southern region on rail tours. Now under new ownership, Stafford was given an overhaul, which was completed in 1981 and was used on rail tours across the island and on the southern region, even into the sectorization days of British Railways. While British Railways Class 74, number 74005, is now preserved at a Heritage Railway in Luton, where it is currently at static display. As of today, Stafford is still seen on the Northwestern Railway doing utility duties across the main line, but hasn't really operated within the southern region since the 1990s, after the privatization of British Railways. But he has still stated to keep up with the times, with even him visiting the Heritage Railway that his brother is at, while also pulling the express from time to time, with Stafford stated to continue operating even into the 2020s. Number 6. Splatter and Dodge, in my headcanon, are based on the British Railways Class 11, a fleet of diesel shunting locomotives that were built by the LMS and later British Railways between the late 1940s and the early 1950s. They would work for British Railways until the 1970s, where they were sold off to other companies, and a few of them even entered into preservation, with the rest of them being cut up for scrap. Around sometime during the 1980s, the Nathgraw coking plant, which was located in Wales, had recently withdrawn 2 diesel locomotives as they're placed in storage awaiting the cutter's torch after operating for the National Coal Board. Fortunately, the 2 diesels would end up in private hands before eventually being purchased by the Northwestern Railway in 1990. Now under new ownership, the 2 diesels would be given back their original numbers, as they were once held when operating for British Railways, and were soon used as shunters around the yards at Teignmouth, essentially becoming the new station pilot. During their time as the station pilot, the 2 diesels would be given nicknames such as Splatter and Dodge after their operations in South Wales with the NCB. The two diesels would keep their names after their overhaul within the early 2000s, and as of today, you'll still see them shunting around the yards at Tidmouth, although they have been demoted to other duties since the station pilot has already been taken over by two Class 08s. Although they're not used as station pilots anymore, the two diesels are still in operations with the Northwestern Railway, shunting around wagons across the yards and the port areas around Tidmouth, even after their overhauls during the late 2010s, with the two diesels continuing to operate for the Northwestern Railway ever since. Number 7. For the celebrations of Rail 200, an inspiration train had been launched out of London's Paddington to tour across Great Britain until the summer of 2026, where it would visit the many heritage railways across Great Britain, as well as the many railway stations to be on display for all the people to see and learn about the history of the British Railway network. After the celebrations at Crovan's Gate, the Northwestern Railway, in which wanting to continue on the tradition of the Rail 200 celebrations, had the inspiration train come to Sodor and made a stop at Vicarstown, where a Great Western 2884 class would pick up the train and then take it on a tour across the island. The inspiration train would travel across the island, with a Class 66 being used in case if the steam engine failed, as it made stops at the stations as the passengers would climb on board the carriages to learn about the history of British railways. And after the tour had been completed, the train would soon return to Barrow and Furness, with the inspiration train would depart from that station to continue on its tour across Great Britain, as the steam engine pulling the train was soon sent back to the island for operations with the Northwestern. As of now, the inspiration train is still continuing on its tour around Great Britain, as the train will continue on its tour, making stops at the many heritage railways and railway stations for the passengers to learn about the history of the British railway scene. And the Great Western engine that pulled the train is still operating with us on the island of Sodor. Number 8. The Belmont Limited, a hospitality and leisure company, had operated a few train services across the British Isles, and in the early 2000s, the island of Sodor would receive a fleet of British Railways Mark III carriages from Ireland to be used on a tourist luxury train service for the Belmont Company. And after an overhaul at the Crovan's Gate Works with some refurbishments, the new service would be introduced around late 2010, which would be known as the Royal Sudrian, which would run from Tidmouth bound for Barrow and Furness, where the two trains would split off from that station, with the first half going to Glasgow and the other going towards London. The locomotives that would be used to operate this service would be the Class 66s and the Class 67s for the non-electrified services outside of either Preston and Carlisle. And for the electrified services, a Class 90 would be used to operate the train bound for either Glasgow or London. Despite the Royal Sudrian being diesel and electric hauled, some steam locomotives are used on this service, like Gordon, Spencer, and Rebecca, formerly known as Spitfire, in which they would pull these types of services as far as Vicarstown before letting a diesel take over the service bound for Preston or Carlisle. As of today, Belmont still operates the Royal Sudrian out of Tidmouth, and with contract by the Northwestern Railway as well as the other railway operators to operate the service for the company. And with Belmont slated to continue operating the service even into the 2030s, it is likely assumed that the Belmont's Royal Sudrian would continue to operate for the Northwestern Railway, with the British Railways Mark III from Ireland continuing to operate for the company ever since. Number 9. The LB and SCR E1 class was a fleet of 060 tank engines that were designed by William Strowley and built between 1874 and 1891 at their very own Brighton Works for short-distance goods trains and piloting duties across the LB and SCR's system. They would operate for the LB and SCR and later Southern and British Railways with even some of them even being rebuilt into an 062 type tank engine, otherwise known as the E1R. Although by the 1960s, all of them have been withdrawn from service, aside from one, which is currently now under the hands of the East Somerset Railway, and is currently on site display there ever since. LB and SCR E1 class number 117, Florence, was built sometime during 1877 for use across the LB and SCR's system, and although its name was removed sometime during its operational career, it was withdrawn from service in 1913 and set aside for storage. After being in storage for a few months, it was soon sold off to the Teignmouth, Cronk and Surrey Railway for operations around the island and later becoming a part of the North Western Railway in 1914. The locomotive would be used as a departmental unit, as it was stationed at Teignmouth to do maintenance duties across the main line as far as Kildare, with the locomotive even helping out at the station shunting trains in and out of the yards until at least the 1920s, where the locomotive would do odd jobs for the rest of its career. In the 1930s, the engine was sent for an overhaul at the Crovan's Gate Works, where after coming out of the works and receiving back its old name, Florence would become the North Western Railway's main utility tank engine outside of Teignmouth, as she was used on the Fireporter branch line as a supplementary engine whenever Thomas wasn't around, with even the engine being seen on the main line on local trains bound for Wellsworth and or Kildare. And throughout its years on the North Western and later British Railways era, it would continue to work on this job even after it was relocated bound for Knapford during the late 1960s. However, it was demoted into departmental use once again sometime during the 1970s for a revaluation project, and was soon put back into its normal duties as it had since the 1930s. As of today, Florence is still operational with us on the North Western Railway, with her now being used as one of the main engines operating along the Fireporter branch line, with even her being used on the departmental trains from time to time. And after a recent overhaul at the Crovan's Gate Works, she's now operational with us to this day, operating along the Fireporter branch line. And finally, number 10. The station at Luton is located at the Dunstable branch line, which was unfortunately closed in 1965, and the station is located right next to the current Luton station, which is still operational to this day. But in my headcanon, a heritage railway would operate along the former Dunstable branches, with the main headquarters of the heritage railway being at Luton, and would be called the Dunstable Valley Railway, which would run from Elliot bound for Stanbridgeport, where the heritage railway would be completed by 1966, and would use a variety of motive power from steam to diesel, which would operate along the line bound for the destinations that they're intended to go to. The heritage railway would be a profitable success, as the line would continue to be maintained by the heritage railway, as engines would become permanent residents of the heritage railway, while others were sent away for other heritage railways to work at. Although at some point they did want to extend the line bound for Wilton at the East Coast Mainline station, that plan was unfortunately cancelled due to a lack of budget, and so the heritage railway would continue to operate even without the connection from the East Coast Mainline. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, many rail tours were set along the heritage railway, mainly on the charity events that the heritage railway would hold on this day. So much so that in the 1990s, with a lot of budget in their hands, they extended the line from Stanbridgeport bound for Langton Buzzards at a separate railway station akin to the main railway station. While all of this was going on, the heritage railway would have to be rerouted bound for Luton Parkway to make way for a railway station that had been constructed there, with the original alignment unfortunately being ripped up during this construction. Despite that outcome, the heritage railway would continue to operate even with the influx of rail tours coming in and out of the railway line, with even the heritage railway operating a fleet of engines that are extinct but are preserved in this headcanon. And throughout the 2000s and early 2010s, the heritage railway would continue to operate even with a plan to finally extend the line bound for Wealdon Garden City, which was completed sometime during the late 2010s. And as of today, the Heritage Railway is still operating within the town of Luton, as the many engines that came and went around the Heritage Railway scene, but the legacy of the Dunstable Heritage Centre and the Dunstable branch line would live on to this very day. And with that out of the way, I think it's time that I'm going to announce something. So yeah, that's basically everything that I need to say in this little video that I made, just because it's January and I'm basically obligated to do this. Now, you may be thinking, okay, so you've basically done all of this, why are you saying that there's gonna be an announcement during this video? Well, it's about the series that I've been making since, of like 3 years ago. And is that I'm gonna be ending this series as of this year. And the point that I'm trying to say right now, it's something to be said, but yeah, I'm unfortunately gonna be ending the series this year, just not this month. Now you may be thinking, if you're going to end the series, then when is it due? Well, I have been planning to end the series since last year, but due to the 80th anniversary in Rail 200, I had to postpone it until like this year, where I can finally just end the series here and there. And so, around July of this year, the 19th entry of my AOLO Rambling series would be coming to an end with a special video commemorating 3 years of this whole ordeal just basically being a thing on this channel. So yeah, that is everything that you need to know from this announcement. Oh yeah, the 17th entry would also be coming out around March of this year, so stay tuned for that. And also stay tuned for the finale for this little series that I created. Bye!